Tut, tut, tut. Brighton 4, Chelsea 1. Not the best place to be going if you're Graham Potter. He endured a bit of a nightmare on his return to the Amex Stadium as Brighton thrashed Chelsea to claim a first victory under their new manager, Roberto De Zerbi. Cass, you watched the game. What did you make of the performance yesterday?
What, of Chelsea or Brighton?
Well, both. I mean,
okay.
Chelsea were just a bit defensively.
Well, they started.
diabolical.
Look, I complimented Thiago Silva in midweek for his performance against Salzburg. He was brilliant. As great as a central defender I've seen in the Premier League. Technically, composure, and the start of the game, he started the game really poorly. I see him probably have the poorest game he's had in a Chelsea shirt. With that, Brighton was superb in a 4. Well, I would say probably, if you look at their lineup, it was probably more of a sort of a 4-2-3-1 in their setup, Brighton. And with that, Dunk looked so good. I mean, you think that Lewis Dunk has been ignored by England when clearly he is a really good centre-half. He really can lead brilliantly. Chelsea was mistakes everywhere. It's hard to identify one player or go for a scapegoat. The whole team were well off their pace in the game. I mean, even players like Cucurella, who came on, was all over the place. You know, he really was all over the place. He looked like he didn't know where to be. He's the £62 million signing that Chelsea have made. He really did. And maybe he suffered a bit because Graham Potter has brought him off even before half-time and changed systems with him. He looks like a guy who's completely lost going to a big club at the moment. And look, Brighton are a very, very good side.
Dunk, would you take him to the World Cup?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. He's been ignored far too long. I think he's that sort of Dan Burnell at Newcastle where you just look at and think, well, they do really well. You know, what's wrong with a 7, 8 out of a 10 defender every week? And Dunk is that.
Yeah.
You know, he makes very few mistakes. He's very good at set pieces. He's dominant aerially. And if you get someone alongside him that's decently quick, he's fine. He handled everything. I mean, Chelsea were really poor yesterday. Yeah. You know, you have to recognise that the performance of Chelsea was, there were so many players that were off it. Exactly.
And missing a few players as well to injuries. I know that's not always the best excuse.
Well, it doesn't help.
It doesn't help, exactly. Trossard for Brighton, I mean, he's just been brilliant this season. And he opened the score in 5 minutes in. I mean, I think his contract's up in the summer. Does he get a big move after the season that he's had so far?
I don't know. It's always a risk of how much do you pay for someone. Well, what I can say, he's been brilliant for Brighton. He looks like a goal threat. He's like Bowen at West Ham when he went on that run of getting goals and he's direct and he just runs at people. He's a really good finisher. He reminds me of Bowen. Jared Bowen at West Ham, that sort of type of player. Is it going to be a season where he just hits it, you know, week in, week out? What I can say, he can make an effect on the game, that's for sure. And he's quicker than people give him credit for. He's got half a yard that if he gets away from defenders, you ain't catching him. He's done terrific. But then the Brighton as a team have done brilliant.
You can feel the frustration now of Chelsea fans because in a way it's a good time, but are they good enough up front? You know, is Kai Havertz the answer?
No, it's not Kai. I'm not even sure that Aubameyang is a player that Chelsea will be looking at into next season. I think he'll end up happening what happened to him at Barcelona. They brought him to the club, got a big signing, then realised quite quickly they have to move away to a better striker. I think Chelsea will have to do that as a football club. They'll come away from Aubameyang by the end of the season and they'll look for an alternative, without a doubt. Look, as I see it today, Brighton are 2 points clear of Liverpool.
Brighton 2 points clear of Liverpool. There you go.
Through the third of the season. And to be fair, they've been unlucky not to get a few more points with the new manager coming in. They've had some really good performances and been beaten. So fair play to the club. The club is just a conveyor belt. It's a machine of just keep continuing. Losing managers, you losing director of football, losing players. They just keep going on and keep getting results.
Yeah.
It's brilliantly run.
They spent so much money, Chelsea, in the summer transfer window. Have any of their signings stood out to you so far this season?
Oh, wow, good question. Not really. I mean, Koulibaly, who's come to the club, has done all right. No more than that. Players that are called back in. Gallagher's come in and hasn't really forged to. I mean, he played yesterday and done all right. He was one of the better Chelsea players. Aubameyang, no. Sterling, Bill hit and miss for Chelsea. Probably less. It's not got close to the the performances that he had for Man City for me often enough. So no, not really anybody stood out.
And how do you see them doing under Graham Potter then?
Well, it's a tough one because it's really early days and he's had a great start and that's the first game he's lost. So, you've got to give him some credit. Maybe he learned a hell of a lot yesterday, Graham Potter, about where his team are and where the football club are and what he needs to do. I think you can sometimes in a heavy defeat, and Man United had that experience against Man City recently when they lost 6-3. You learn a lot sometimes from a heavy defeat. I think that could be the case for Chelsea.
And you're right. I mean, to go back to Brighton, his former club, and to be humbled like that.
Yeah, deserved it, totally.
Absolutely. They're without Reece James. Do you see Chelsea dropping down the table, or Cass, or do you think that they can make their way back in the top
It's a funny
four and
one.
be comfortable?
I'm not sure. Chelsea have always had a budget that's so competitive that they can change things pretty quickly by additions to a football team. And they do that brilliantly well. And that, look at Chelsea have been a very successful club over the last 2 decades. And the guy that's bought it seems to be incredibly ambitious. I think Graham Potter will have to do a lot of thinking about how he changes the dynamics of his team, because it does. Look, Thiago Silva's brilliant. I love him. And I wouldn't even mind if he got an extra year because he's such a good, talented player. But you have to look beyond the 73-year-old. I was going to say 37-year-old. And I think you do have to look beyond. And that doesn't mean you don't have to let him go. You can say keep him and maybe bring a young centre-half through. Rudiger was a big loss for Chelsea because he'd done so well at just the horrible things in the side that he was a horrible player to play against. Yeah. You could just see that. I think Chelsea will make the top four, but I think Graham Potter will have to be his brilliant at best as technically to try and sort out this team, because what we saw yesterday, Brighton was so much better than Chelsea.